All right, we are live on another episode of Sports to Suits, where weekly I have the opportunity to highlight former athletes that are absolutely crushing it in the business community. And so this week I am super excited to have my guest Zwede Hewitt on. Zwede, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for hosting me, Amanda. Looking forward to some insightful conversation.
Absolutely. And so we had a little bit of tech issues with the timing and everything else. So if you are listening in, definitely drop us a comment just so that we know that you can hear us and that all is working well on the tech side of things. So while I check on all of that, Zwede, why don't you do a little bit of just a quick intro of yourself so that as people are popping in, then they can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, sure. Again, thanks for hosting me, Amanda. Well, my name is Zwede Hewitt. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally, born and raised, educated in the US. So I went to Baylor University, so shout out to the Bears. My background predominantly has been in track and field. So I'm a former track and field athlete. Competed at pretty much every level, from a Caribbean region, CRIFTA Games, the Pan Am Games, the CAC Games, World Championships, went to the Olympics. Highlight, I guess, would say be the 2014 Commonwealth Games bronze medal. I'm an 8-time All-American for Baylor University, D1 track. And now I'm a tech entrepreneur, so that's a light background on me. Happy to dive into a bit more as I continue the conversation.
Well, and this is a little bit of a competitive nature that you don't necessarily know about, but my great uncle played
Mhm.
basketball for the University of Houston, which
Oh,
is
well,
very
yes, yes,
competitive with Baylor.
yes.
So I heard all about Baylor when we were
Mhm.
talking about background and family time stuff. So
Oh.
always fun. So why don't you I want to dive in a little bit because there's so much that we're going to get into as far as entrepreneurship and startup world and the investment side of things. But how
Mhm.
did you get into track and field? Like, what about track and field drew you into competing in that space?
I was quick. That's the easiest response. So, at a young age, actually, when I was like a like almost a toddler, when I learned to run, I would run away from home. So I would
What?
always, yeah, I'd be running away from home, and my mom would like be chasing me down the street. And I noticed I was fast, so they put me in track at a fairly young age. How our track and field sport structure is set up, you have high school competing against high school. So that's a pretty big thing. So you'd represent like your region, your high school, and then your region will compete against different regions across the country. So started competing actually in, I would say, preschool from about 7 years old.
Wait, you were
Yeah.
competing
I'm
in
not,
preschool?
well, 7 years old, at 7 years old. So we call this primary school in Trinidad. We start primary school at 5. So that's what we considered first year. So I started competing from maybe about 7 years old, just within the school competitive arena. And then, I mean, I showed prominence at a young age. So I was able to be like a high school champion, national champion at the high school level, and then went on to represent our country at the National Junior Track and Field Championships, which are like the CARICOM Games, such a Caribbean track and field championships, which I was, I think, a 2 or 3 time champion. The Pan American Junior Games, the World Junior Championships, the Commonwealth Juniors, the World Youth Championships. Pretty much went to everything at the junior level, everything. Yeah.
So what about it did you absolutely love? Like was it a sport that you were like absolutely in love with, or was it something that just became part of your regular routine? I would imagine starting so young that it was
Mm-hmm.
just part of everyday life for you.
Correct. It was part of everyday life, and I mean, my parents raised us to be fairly productive even from a young age. So it was a good way for us to channel, or for me to channel my energy into something that was productive. So that is really how it started. It started with you're fast, go do this while you're young. Just spend your energy and your time doing that. As time went on, and again, I continued progressing. My parents took like a keen eye towards this as being something that we could actually take seriously, and it kept me in it. I mean, so shout out to my parents for keeping me focused and keeping me actually in sports. That is, I guess, one of the greatest things they ever did for me. So Yeah, just I kept excelling at it. I enjoyed it, and then my natural competitive nature is what kept me, to be engrossed and involved and having it as my passion. So competitiveness, being something that I'm good at a young age, and then I actually started seeing monetary benefits from it at a very young age. So I was the
Really?
yeah I was the youngest of five siblings, and there would be occasionally little meets where you would win like $50. I mean, that was back however long ago, $100, and I would be the youngest with the most money. So I started at an early age, started to realize that I guess this could be something that could earn me money and earn me a living.
So I typically don't ask this question because I don't want to get into like the political side of sports,
Mhm.
but what do you think about NIL? So now like athletes having the opportunity to be compensated based on their
Mhm.
name, image, and likeness. What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's fantastic. We just have to ensure that these athletes and how they carry about their image and likeness is really in a way that is sort of like protected, that seeks
Yep.
their interest. So in terms of how they align to certain brands, how they present themselves on social media, I think that is more so what we have to look at. But I think this is a landmark as a student athlete or a former student athlete. This is something that we always wanted. We always look forward to. So to see it actually happening, that's a big deal. So I hope that the student athletes who are currently engaged, they utilize it to their benefit as soon as possible. Because again, the sooner you can understand that that sport that you're doing is a business, you would understand that your personal career and your image and your likeness is literally a facet of that business. So now, when you look at the successful athlete, is more than just the one who can dominate on field. It's people who have an actual character. They carry about a higher meaning outside of the sport. So again, when you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, there's a reason why he's the most popular person on Instagram. Super focused, dedicated, and he drives that value that is transition through his image and likeness through social media. So again, there's a lot of value in it in terms of from a monetary perspective. You can make more money from your image and likeness than you can actually make from playing the sport. So definitely something to take serious. And the sooner you get the ball rolling on it, I mean, you can transition that out after sport into your professional career, into your life. So all of it, you can. So start early and do it correctly is my best advice, I would say.
So we've got some people popping in here. So we know that the live is working real well. We've got Adam
Mhm.
Mitchell. So Adam is in gymnastics, in the gymnastics
Okay,
world.
nice.
We've got Jason Hurley popping in. And I'm sorry if I say this name incorrectly, Monet. Hopefully that's right. Is popping in. Good day to you as well. We do have some questions, but before we get into questions,
Mhm.
I want to dive into like what was it like coming from your country and then going into the university in the States? I mean, I would assume that that's a very different world to transition into and then going and being a student athlete
Mhm.
at Baylor. I mean, it's a pretty prestigious school as well.
Definitely. Well, fortunately, I'm the youngest of five siblings. All of my siblings, they went to college in the US. I was the only one who went the student athlete part. But however, just getting insight from them in terms of the general collegiate experience, that eliminated like a barrier of fear of the initial entry point of going to somewhere. So that was a definite help. And then again, having four siblings who are living in the US, my brother, like he came, he helped me get set up. He would come to my track meets. So I had a good support system, safe to say. But my entry point actually into Baylor was quite a unique one. It was through business and strategic networking. So I didn't apply for any college at all. My dad, we operate a family business. It's actually a sport distribution company and technology solution provider for the Caribbean. We represent Gill Athletics, which is the largest manufacturer of track and field equipment in America, and actually, I think number one in the world. So we are the sole distributors for the Caribbean for that brand. The owner of Gill actually went to Baylor University. Gill is the track and field sponsor for Baylor University. So all
Wow.
of, all of our equipment, our team rooms was all outfitted by Baylor. So literally, my dad was having a conversation with that gentleman, and it was like, "Hey, just casual business guy speaking about their family." And my dad was like, "I have a son who runs the 400 meters, and he's doing pretty well." The gentleman said, "Well, actually, do you know that Baylor University is actually one of the top ranked universities in America for 400 meters? What does your son do?" And he just had a general conversation. And It and eventually led to where he said if he spoke to the coach, which was Clyde Hart. He spoke to the coach came back and said if Zwede runs 46 anything, he gets a full scholarship to Baylor. I promise you. The guy came back and said that to my dad. 2 years later, I ran 46.04 and I got a full scholarship to Baylor the next year. And that was college. So I never applied, was able to get into Baylor through a strategic connection through business and my dad and he having that connection. So all those were inspirations in terms of my current venture and how I got into business and my sort of like modus operandi of how I do business. I approach it from more of a strategic networking perspective and decision and deal making. That is more how I operate and lead business as an entrepreneur.
So I want to dive, I want to spend the majority of this conversation into entrepreneurship, technology, startups, investments. But I want to know, what was your experience like at Baylor? Because we have a lot of student athletes, new student athletes, as well as transitioning out student athletes. Mm-hmm. What was your experience like being at Baylor and being a student athlete?
It was life-changing in a positive direction. So Baylor, I would say, is definitely one of my marquee moments of my life. Definitely a lot of growth. One, Baylor being a prestigious school, you can say, they have a really good academic background or academic curriculum, you can say, and that helped a lot in terms of my professional career path development. One, and then also holistic development in terms of it wasn't an institution that just focused on, hey, you guys will compete and that's it, that's all. No, they actually promoted a balance of the athletics and the academics. So that is something that they pride themselves on. And I definitely see it transition into the holistic development of athletes because right now Baylor is ranked on average across all sports #1 D1 school in America across all of their sports. So I actually was there for the transition from, I got into Baylor in 2009. That was the transitioning period from where Baylor was sort of, let's say, an average sports school to a top tier sports school. After 2009, I think we had Robert Griffin, who won the Heisman in 2010. We had the women's basketball, who won with Brittany Griner. By the way, you guys, Brittany Griner has been trapped in Ukraine, in Russia for some time. This is actually something very serious. I do not know if she has been released as yet, but there is some sort of maybe petition. Go check it out. Brittany Griner is Olympic gold medalist from the USA and also Baylor University national champion, women's NBA champion. So crazy story, but go check it out. So Brittany Griner is a personal friend of mine. So I was in Baylor University when we had that transition into high success. And what that transitioned into for the university was a high level of investment and business success. So I kid you not, after we had Robert win the Heisman, Brittany and they won the women's basketball, a couple of weeks later, we had, or the next semester, we had an announcement. We received an anonymous $200 million donation. A couple of weeks later, we received another $50 million donation. We built like a new stadium, a new business school, this department. So it literally transitioned the indirect benefits of sport, attracted all of this business into the school to where there's an account now where in the past couple of years, one of our donations has exceeded like $1.something billion. That has just built a lot of stuff. So now we see Waco transitioning from a bubble within a small town to an actual college town. So now the city of Waco, for example, is partnering with the basketball team. They're constructing a new arena, which would host our basketball games, but also like concerts and festivals that are happening in Waco. So sport contributed to direct business interest and success in the school. A funny and real story in terms of some of the real life applications of business and how it was related to sport. Drayton McLean, billionaire, he was the owner of the Houston Astros at a point. In the entry level course at business school to enter the business school, he came in and he was like a guest speaker. And the question was it was pretty much something impossible for anyone within our lifespan to know. You had to like name all of the players like back from whenever. And he had an autograph ball with all of his players. No one got it. Eventually, there was an Asian kid back of the class. He raised his hand. He answered the question. Drayton was like, Mr. McLean was like, how did you get that? I knew you didn't know the answer. The guy said, this was in 2009. The Asian kid said, I Googled it. Drayton McLean threw the ball for him and said, that is you being strategic and smart in business. And he didn't cheat. I mean, he wasn't cheating. So just a real life
He was just
application.
using the tools that he had available to him.
Correct. And we were all paranoid about that might be cheating. But when you understand business encourages collaboration. It encourages you being able to figure out to get access, how to use and utilize, and sometimes even create these tools that would set you apart from competition. So, I mean, early lessons there. However, funny story, I dropped out of the business school. I had a meeting with my dean, and he said one day, because Baylor has a very high attendance rate that you have to maintain, and I was borderline failing. He said, I'll give you the realest advice. Business waits on no man. So you're doing really well in track. I would advise you to either pick potentially really about going pro and doing an easier major, or you dedicate your time into business. I dropped out of the business school. I have a request of invitation from the new dean to come and be a speaker at Baylor University.
Did you ever graduate from Baylor?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, so you said a word, and this is playing into the question that Jason is asking. So we use the word success and successful a lot in the entrepreneur and sports arena. Has your perception of success changed throughout the years? Why or why not?
Definitely. The perception of success definitely changes as time goes by. And I think that is what shifts that perspective, in the sense that when you are caught up in the moment, you might have this vision of what you deem as, let's say, a successful athlete. Equates to you being a successful athlete, let's say your performance on the field, will equate a successful life. However, I have seen this time and time again, so where, for example, athletes who transition poorly of the sport would have realized that a lot of this high level success as an athlete sometimes doesn't translate to a happy, successful life. So that from seeing that early, and then also having good connections to, like, let's say, retired athletes, to give that advice and mentorship to understand that education, for example, is potentially far more important than your success ever is going to be on the field. So getting that advice, going to a good university like Baylor University, which have instilled for us, again, holistic development, I believe now is what the measure of success is as an athlete, as a human being, as a business person. I mean, because again, you can make all the money and Steve Jobs, so the perspective of success now is really, again, more so in terms of personal development and growth and progress, and you as an individual holistically advancing and progressing. Because again, you may not realize, and this is something that I, for example, learned afterwards, that I actually think that my gift may not have been track and field. I actually think that my gift may have been me being able to connect and communicate with people and be an entrepreneur. So for a long time, I thought, and a lot of people around me would have projected, that my success in terms of who Zwede Hewitt is determined to my success in the sporting arena, and that is something that messes with a lot of athletes in terms of their pressure that, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And they put your life literally is you on the field,
Yep.
So it's important, again, for athletes, I think, very early to understand that there is, of course, a longer road than just being an athlete, and cater towards more of a holistic development part. Of course, you must have your very firm goals, but don't be caught up in terms of failure. Failure is just another step for you to potentially succeed. So again, that is my take in terms of general what success was and what it has transitioned to now, more so.
So we've got a couple other people popping in here. So Patrick Johnson. So you may know Patrick. If not, he's an amazing person. We've got Nathan popping in. He says hello as well.
Hey guys.
So you're talking about the transition, right? And I talk to a lot of athletes that struggle with the transition, mainly because of some of the things that you have mentioned a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about the synergies between sport and entrepreneurship, because I've found there are so many incredible former athletes that are highly successful entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. But just because you're a former athlete does not mean that you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. So there's there's almost like this triggering event or this synergy that happens once you figure out how to leverage your athletic background into business or entrepreneurship. So where do you see the synergies between sport and business?
Well, to answer that, you are correct. First and foremost, when you said we see a lot of athletes, for example, transitioning into sport, and they're terrible entrepreneurs. Some of them. No,
but they're conditioned to be told that they have these skill sets and these backgrounds, and if they can just tackle it into entrepreneurship, you'll be an amazing entrepreneur. And that's not necessarily the case, but
that's
they're
not
conditioned
necessarily
to
the
believe
case.
that.
They're conditioned to believe that, and what they need to be reconditioned to believe is that they will need to find that particular vertical that they could potentially succeed at and try not to do everything. So, and this is a misconception. A lot of times we think as entrepreneurs we have to do everything, but depending on who you are as an athlete, sometimes that might allow you to do even far less. And this may be one of the greatest problems that athletes who, let's say, are highly successful in sports suffer with in terms of the transition to entrepreneurship, is that typically being an athlete, it's all about you. It's a lot of personal development and personal interest. So they take that they having to be the person in charge and do things, that is sometimes a major hiccup and holdback. So literally, sometimes all you need to do is relax and be the face, and you find the right people to operate and set up a business. And that still makes you an entrepreneur, meaning you just have been able to, however, identify your strongest value proposition in terms of creating a successful business, right? There's, however, a very, I would say, unique, not opportunity, but sort of like synergy between B-grade athletes and entrepreneurs, because B-grade athletes typically are the ones who would have had to persevere a bit more, trying to achieve that goal of those same pressures of everything and everyone wanting to become this particular person, and you sometimes go a bit further into that pathway than you would have expected, but the growth that you have achieved during those pressure times of literally everything coming down of you, all these high expectations, all of the failures, but you still keep going, literally all of the failures, and you keep failing, because in sports, I mean, you lose literally. I don't know how else to
you
put
fall and you get smacked on your
yeah,
face. Like I talked a little bit about this. There's an episode that's going to come out on a platform called Amstigator, and we talked about gymnastics is all about the perfect 10. So from a young age, you're always conditioned around perfectionism. And so one of the biggest challenges for me as an entrepreneur, and a new entrepreneur at that, is perfectionism. Entrepreneurship is not about perfection. I mean, there's so much around that. I mean, you fall flat on your face constantly. You're having to completely divert at any given time. It's all about being flexible and surrounding yourself with the right people and being okay to fail. That's one of the biggest challenges that I've had to overcome as an entrepreneur. What are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, definitely not failure, because failure took for me. I learned failure in track and field. So for me, it was coming again. My perspective will be a bit different. Coming from a small island where it is a bit more of an unproductive region, and then also generally, how to say this, we have less developed entrepreneurial systems in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean, right? So the challenges that I would have faced as an entrepreneur would have been, especially doing something innovative, lack of resources generally, so lack of good financing opportunities to scale this idea that I would have or nurture this idea, lack of general advice. So where I came from, again, the unique challenges I faced was a lack of resources generally. That was my hardest challenge in terms of overcoming. So I fortunately, however, had the opportunity to be educated in the States. So I understand how to navigate the US a bit more so than someone who didn't live there. So I was able to travel there, attend pitch competitions, and sort of like develop those resources that I would have needed to nurture this business. But then, so lack of resources is my definitely my number one challenge. But I'm thinking as well, wherever you are in the world, that might be your number one challenge anyway as well too, right?
Well, and you know what's interesting? So you and I connected
Mhm.
probably a couple months ago at this point, and we
Mhm.
immediately hit it off around entrepreneurship and global business and networking.
Mhm.
You are an incredible networker, and one of
Mhm.
the things that you are working on is the Draper Startup House. So
Correct.
for anybody that is tuning in that is not familiar with the Draper Startup House, definitely check it out. It is a incredible opportunity for global entrepreneurship, and it's backed by Tim Draper. And why don't you dive in a little bit about that specific entity, because it's so powerful what you guys are doing from a global business perspective to provide resources
Mhm.
to people that may not have access to some of these resources.
Definitely. So, me again, in terms of overcoming that barrier I would have faced of access to resources, I leveraged some of the digital tools, LinkedIn, trying to find programs, pitch competitions, and I found Draper somewhere in my research, and I saw that he was an investor, invested in a couple of the most credible and successful companies in the world: Tesla, SpaceX, Skype. So I wanted to learn more, and I realized that there are people and there are organizations that offer these resources in various forms, from advice to mentorship to funds to partnerships. So I found this Draper entity. I participated in an online program by Draper University. So background on Tim. Tim Draper is a third generation venture capitalist, currently investing in over 35 unicorn companies. Those are companies that have achieved over $1 billion. Sometimes he is the very first check. So he has been like the first $1 million check in Robinhood, one of the first checks in Skype. And they would have now expanded their portfolio outside of direct VC. He has 12 different funds. Some of them are tailored around more the accelerator type style, where they focus on development of entrepreneurs through education, strategic advice, and partnerships. And then they invest in the good businesses that come out of that pipeline, right? I participated in an online program. Tim liked what we were working on, so one of like the top 10 out of 70 startups was able to pitch to him. He invited me to his in-person accelerator program. So they do something called hero training twice a year. They invite people with big ideas and big plans to participate in an entrepreneurial training program. They have invested so far around $900 million into entrepreneurs who have participated, or startups that have participated through Draper University. Um, so yeah, I participated in that program in the middle of the pandemic. This is 2021, and it was quite interesting. This was another life-changing venture in terms of not just the coaching and the educational arm of things, but the real side of things. If you understand Tim, he's a radical person, radical thinker. So part of that program was 5 days, no technology, no money, camping on his 1,200-acre estate, shooting guns, bows, arrows, developing your physical conditioning, hiking over 80 plus miles. Holistic development is key as it relates to entrepreneurial growth. So life-changing event. I was fortunate to be able to develop a relationship with Tim Draper, where
And
I
he is
know
super nice. Like I had
super
the
nice.
opportunity to meet him in Portugal over the
Mhm,
summer, and he was going through an interview with one of
mhm.
my good friends, Rhett Power, and he's such a nice guy. Like
He
he's
is.
just a super friendly, very nice guy, and I really enjoyed learning from him, even that small amount of time that I got to just witness in on the conversation.
Definitely a great guy. Interesting. A bit crazy for his age, but interesting guy. So develop a good relationship with him. I support in terms of their business development across the Caribbean. So I introduce him and his funds to investable opportunities, governments, and universities to again bridge some of those resources that are typically lacked in various areas. Draper Startup House is one of those funds. So across the world, we create entrepreneur hubs that provide co-working, co-living, and programs towards entrepreneurs. We are in 28 locations across the world. So think of us as infrastructure that supports entrepreneurs. You can come and meet a community of like-minded people, get access to our events, workshops, but we directly invest. We invest between 25 to 100K in early stage startups.
It's an incredible, incredible opportunity and so needed globally. I mean, there's so many incredible people all around the world that just have a need for resources. And
Hmm.
with those resources, they can build incredible companies. And that's the thing that I absolutely love about entrepreneurship is watching something go from complete seed all the way up to a significantly large company that's ultimately making impacts.
Hmm.
So talk a little bit about Luhu, like, because you're doing some incredible things on the technology side as well with what you're doing with Luhu, and I hope I'm
Hmm.
saying that right.
Hmm.
But why don't you share a little bit about that too? Because you are in startup mode, right? You're getting
Correct.
ready to launch product, and you're doing some incredible global focused business. So why don't you dive a little bit into some of the work you're doing there?
Okay, yes, well, definitely. Well, Luhu was sort of like the start of this journey that led towards the introductions to Tim and Bay. So I had an idea and it revolved around improving how people connect and communicate, understanding that I'm a fairly good communicator. I saw that the world was transitioning now more so towards purpose-driven communication in terms of connecting with people based off of maybe some sort of mutual value. And then if you have a good interaction or good transaction, then you develop a relationship moving forward. When you consider how social media started, it more so started as a means for people just literally to connect. Facebook, you make all these friends. You Instagram, you have all these people, but for what purpose? So then you realize that we transition more so to how we could more use social media as a tool, and a tool is really you being able to utilize and create and create, capture value from your network. That is one of the major positives I saw through social media, and that's a gap in terms of how we actually use those tools right now. So that was the starting sort of like eureka idea, creating a social platform that allowed people to connect purposefully. Right. At the time, again, lack of resources starting in Trinidad and Tobago. The idea has sort of like pivoted a bit, and we have pivoted more so. But it's interesting though, right? Because when I started this idea, there was not as much advancements in terms of Web3 and Metaverse, and there is now. So we would have pivoted our concept of creating like a social marketplace on Web2. We have pivoted that now to a Caribbean focused social marketplace, right? So it's going to be a platform similar to, let's say, there's WeChat and a hub where you can connect with people, you can find products and services, you can conduct fintech transactions. So we are fintech social marketplace for the Caribbean and diaspora. And the problem that we are solving is really the Caribbean has 40 million people, 40, but we have 3 times that population living outside of the Caribbean in places such as US, Canada, and they all send money back home. And right now, it's still done very brick and mortar, Western Union and MoneyGram. So there is no fintech platform that facilitates transfers from the diaspora back home. And that is what our target focus is now, as we've narrowed our focus, given some pivots and changes with the whole pandemic. But ultimately, with new challenges and new hurdles comes new opportunities. So we'd have pivoted our solution to more of a localized and regional platform, which is actually solving a very strong problem. But there still is now, with advancements of Metaverse and Web3, to where, based off of feedback from Tim and participating in this Draper program, there is a very, very strong opportunity for us to create sort of like this new social platform in the Web3 space. So it's something that I'm considering a little bit later on as we get this ball rolling and gets the social marketplace for the Caribbean off the ground.
So you're diving into a little bit, but I want to make sure that we answer Jason's question. He said, with social media evolving, what space and place do you want to play in within the next few years?
Okay, so actually,
It's a great
no,
question.
it is a great question, right? So understanding the concept behind uh, a new platform to allow people to connect. That is a concept that is called what we consider now a market network. So social networks has transitioned to market networks, and that market network, what I would envision Luhu as a physical version, will be a mall. A shopping mall is a place where there's an arcade, people can come, they can trade, you can shop from, let's say, a big Gucci store, but as you walk out the big Gucci store, you can shop a product from someone who operates a small kiosk. So ideally, in a couple of years, I would envision, well, our hope is to actually creating digital malls in the metaverse across the United States. So that is part of our future a plan for Luhu is a metaverse play, where we have these virtual malls that are tied to physical malls in the US. So you can shop virtually, you'll have avatars. So that is what we're considering for the future of social. And a lot of social is going to be in the metaverse and Web3. So that is sort of like our entry point into the metaverse and considering.
So we've got another question coming in here, and I think I will probably follow up on this one after this. It says, do you know or recommend a website or guide that could help an athlete help to build their business? Is there a step-by-step guide you followed? Sometimes it's hard to tell where to start. So what are some resources, Zwede, that you've used? And you have entrepreneurship in your family, and you were exposed to like somewhat of a global network straight out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So are there some resources, maybe books or guides or people that you follow that are doing an incredible job with this, building businesses from scratch? Are there people
Definitely.
that you would recommend that they follow?
Yeah, definitely. So right now, digital media has it all. YouTube, there's some great guys that you can follow. Dave Metzler, there's Gary V. So right now, what I could consider would be, you can just spend some time literally Google some of the top business coaches on Instagram. You would see a couple of those guys come up. You can follow their content. They are actually usually quite engaging people. So sometimes if you write them an email address, email, they may respond. So starting with the easiest form would be using digital media for you to get some of those tools. With the pandemic happening, a lot of education has transitioned into digital platforms. So master classes. I can switch my camera to look at this, right? That's an online course from Harvard Business School back in 2009, before the pandemic.
That's a name drop right there.
So before the pandemic, I did like a online course in global business at Harvard Business School. So a lot of these top tier schools and educational programs, they now have online curriculums which you can go to. And then, I mean, just do a bit of research. Right now, entrepreneurship is one of the biggest waves that are going on in the world. There are a lot of major conferences that happen, Startup and Grind. You can look up resources such as Tim Draper. They have a lot of online and physical entrepreneurial training programs. So Tim Draper, David Metzler, and then Google a couple of Google entrepreneurial coaches online, and you would see a list of them come up. They're active on social media, active on LinkedIn. Start to use these digital tools. And once you get maybe some sort of conviction in terms of your interest in the space, then you can maybe start to look at the physical parts where you could take a flight, attend a conference, attend meetups. So start online, it's cheapest and fastest.
There's so many incredible coaches. So David Meltzer is one of them. I follow his work.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Draper is one of them. Rhett Power is another one. I'm a super fan. He's a good friend of mine, but I'm also a super fan. Marshall Goldsmith puts out content regularly. He's a really well-known thought leader and business coach. So definitely leverage the existing resources on LinkedIn specifically because they're more business focused most of the time. Start there. And there's really not, everybody's entrepreneurial journey is very, very different. So unfortunately, there's not, in my opinion, a step-by-step guide, but there are resources to tap into and leverage. And there's best practices depending upon what thought leader you're looking into. So I think we've tapped into all of the question. How big can Luhu get?
How big can Luhu get? Well, our aim is to become a unicorn company. So that is the potential. The potential is to become $1 billion business.
And Patrick is tapping in and saying my personal MBA by Josh Kaufman is awesome. So definitely use books and online educational programs and resources and tuning into lives like this. I mean, I learn so much from every single athlete that I talk to, as well as business person that I talk to. I mean, you can pull out little tidbits in every single conversation and learn so much. So I want to know from you today, from a global business perspective, you're probably exposed to so many new concepts and businesses and pitches. What are some things that are super exciting to you right now?
What are some things that are super exciting to me? Agri-tech, sustainable growth, sustainability through agriculture, and integrations of technology in agriculture, I think is a big one. Agri-tech. What else? Let me think. Personally, I'm not super hyped so much about like the metaverse and NFTs. I believe that I'm still a human person. in a sense that, again, I strongly believe that nothing can replace human touch and engagement. Again, it's going to be a viable option, and then also it'll be fun. I definitely think it'll be fun, but I'm not all the way on all of that
Me
digital
neither.
stuff. So I look more so at applications of technology to real life applications. So agri-tech is a big one. And then I believe truthfully what we're doing as well in terms of ecosystem building and entrepreneurship building. I believe that this entrepreneurship space is a lot bigger than just we think as relates to a potential ecosystem. So entrepreneurs now create cities. So on the wider scheme of things, I see building of cities being like the next wave on Earth, outside of like the Elon Musk and they going to like the moon and Mars. I think the creation of cities are like going to be the next big thing
Well, and like cities on this planet,
on this planet. Yes,
not out in
yes,
like
yes. Yes, literally, and entrepreneurs are the ones going to be
literal
building the
cities.
cities, literal cities. Yes, I see the development of literal cities being like the next it thing, the next it thing.
So Patrick, you are so kind. Thank you so much for I'll take that compliment. And then we've got Grace popping in. Good to see you, Grace. It's been a while. We need to catch up. Real connections and conversations. So you've got only a couple minutes left, and I want to dive into just very high level. We're probably going to have to jump on another one of these at some point,
Okay.
but you're such an incredible networker. And I see, so super connecting is my thing. I love connecting with new people. I love to get to know new people.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has allowed for this to just amplify because you and I connected when you were, I
Mm-hmm.
believe you were in Trinidad at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We were
Yes.
able to have a conversation. So I'm meeting people all around the world that are just doing amazing things. So for
Mm-hmm.
anybody that's listening that wants to like kind of tap into their networking energy, what are tips that you would give to them to go about doing it the right way? Because you, my friend, do it the right way. So I want to tackle a little bit of some of your thoughts around good networking, not bad networking.
Create value first. Be authentically yourself. Are the two priorities I believe in good networking, because good networking is not it's not only about creating connections, but it's about also managing these relationships over time. And you
Yep.
can only manage these relationships over time if you're organically yourself from inception. So being genuine to yourself yields highest conversion of good networking, because people actually appreciate you for being yourself more than you may think. So sometimes you find individuals trying to like fake it to make it or be someone else. It doesn't convert higher. So organically yourself, create value first, or aim to create value first. And if you're not aiming to create value first, do not be afraid to ask for help, because one of the most empowering things you can do to someone is ask them for help. So those would be, I would say, my three strongest networking points: authenticity, create value, and not being afraid to ask for help.
And that is something as an entrepreneur you've got to get used to. Like
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
have got to get used to and super comfortable with asking for help. And it could be asking for a connection. It
Mm-hmm.
could be asking for money. It could be
Mm-hmm.
asking for a resource. It could be asking for a million different things. But that is something that, I've had to overcome a little bit as well, is just
Me
getting
too.
super comfortable and raw about making the ask.
Yeah.
And that's something that if you're interested in jumping into entrepreneurship, you got to get used to it straight out of the gate. So
Have to.
we're running up on time because I know you've got another meeting coming up, and I can't thank you enough for joining me today. So for anybody that's listening that wants to follow your journey or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Don't give phone number, please.
So LinkedIn and Instagram. So Zwede Hewitt on LinkedIn, at Z Hewitt on at Z Hewitt 8989 on Instagram. Those are my tags. Those are some of the best ways to reach me. And if you want to connect to me personally, Zwede at draperstartuphouse.com. Again, if you have a good business, a good idea, we are on a venture fund, so we do invest pretty much across the world. So we'll be looking at good investable opportunities, and even if you're not quite fit as yet, maybe for investment, we could give you maybe some good advice and point you in some good direction. So happy to take a look at some business decks or pitches. And yeah, that's my best ways to reach me.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining. You are always a wealth of knowledge. I love catching up with you. I know that we should probably do a full other hour to where we can dive into networking and connections and community in the future. So I would love to love to do that, and I'm sure everybody listening would love to continue to pick your brain in regards to some of that stuff. And for anybody listening, thank you for continuing to tune into the show. It brings me so much joy to just hear from these former athletes that are doing some incredible things and crushing it in business, because it's such an incredible team and community to be a part of. And I'm so grateful for that. So you guys as listeners, I can't thank you enough for continuing to tune in. And if I can ever be a resource or be of assistance in any way, please feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. I'm not super active on Instagram, so that's not the best way to get in touch with me. But definitely connect me on LinkedIn if you're listening in on the conversation, and tune in every single week. I mean, there's an opportunity to learn from amazing people every single week. So till next week, see you later. Thanks, Zwede, for joining. It's been awesome.
All right. No problem. Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate everyone.